Today we're going to take a look at Google, look at its price, where it stands now, and where it may head in the future. As you can see with this chart right now, I'm on a weekly chart, and it looks like the market is going into this condensed triangular wedge, which generally indicates a strong movement one way or the other. We're going to take a look at that right now. But before I do, just want to remind you that I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm simply looking for patterns in the market. Do your own due diligence when you trade. All right, as I mentioned, we're on the weekly chart. I see a nice wedge pattern. And something interesting about Google is the market has been on a run the last month or two, and Google has kind of stagnated since really, I don't know, I guess it's still at the same price it was back here in August. So it seems like it might be up for some kind of move. And that's why I see this very interesting on the weekly, and we'll drop this down to the daily to also see it. You can see the wedge pattern that the price is getting more and more constricted, more and more squeezed, which kind of indicates that at any point here, especially if it continues to stay in this price range, in this wedge for the next week, that we'll see a break one way or the other. Now, there's really no way to tell which way it can break. You can only be prepared and have a plan for whichever way it breaks to trade accordingly. So if it does break, and let's just say at first it breaks down. Oh, one other thing I did want to mention is I kind of saw on the weekly, this is not a strong channel. It doesn't have a lot of points to it. So this isn't a terribly strong one, but I did see something kind of like, where did I see that at on the weekly? Something like maybe that. Maybe a wedge, like maybe a trend line like that. It's not terrible. And then something equal on the other side, kind of like that. Again, we're just drawing things. This shouldn't take you more than 5 seconds per tool to draw. We're not in the middle of a trigonometry class. We're not trying to figure out the quant data. We're looking for something that's obvious. I do kind of see that, which doesn't really help us a lot per se, but it would say this. It would say if price tends to go up, the more I look at that, the more I like it. It would say that it still kind of gives a bit of resistance here. So if it does fall out, I would say the price is going to make a pretty dramatic move down. How dramatic, I'm not sure, but pretty dramatic. And because we do have this trend line at the bottom of it as well. Now, if price goes up, of course, it will need to hit and break these swing highs, like that right there. Okay, the top of that day, the top of that day, the top of that day, the top of that day. It needs to get through 139.87, round that to a nice round number. It needs to get to 140. So if it can break through 140, it could continue up to 142. And then let's see what we got over here. Yeah, oh, there's top of 2 wicks right there. That looks good. Up to 144. And beyond. So let's see if it can break above. If it does break above, you're going to be looking at 140 and 144. But what if it breaks down? What if it falls out of these trend lines? I like that one. You see the bottom of that wick right there? It's kind of right there in the middle of price. I kind of like that. So I'd put a support line right there, but that's not a real big one. That's at 127, basically 128. So if the market falls out of that, I'd be looking for it to hit 128. And then maybe somewhere around, you just gotta, it's an art, not a science. You see the top of those 2 wicks and the top of that wick? There was resistance right here, or indecision right here. So if I draw, what I mean by indecision is if I draw this line here, that's the top of that wick, top of that wick, top of that wick, almost the bottom of these 2 wicks. Price really ranged in this range right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put another one here too. Yeah, something like that. So if price happens to fall out, I think here are some reasonable targets. 128, right around 123. And then if it's going to go all the way down to about 116, I would see it falling that far. Let's go back to the daily. Those aren't dramatic falls. I like that. The more I look at that, the more I do like that rising channel. Okay. I do think whatever happens, like I said, if it goes up, it's going to be aiming for these 140 and 144. If it goes down out of this triangular pattern, we're going to be looking at 128, 123, and beyond. But the more I look at that rising channel, I do think it means something. Either way, when you look at the chart, I do think for Google, we're going to be anticipating a move. Let me get back to where we can see just the daily. I do think we should be anticipating a move pretty soon. And then we'll let the market tell us which way it wants to go. We're not going to predict. We're just going to prepare. All right, check back later. We'll see what happens with Google.